Welcome to In the Harbor, the podcast where sports, leisure, and finance meet. I'm your host, Jason Johns, today joined with Sean Ritchlin. How you doing today, Sean?
Doing great. Excited for this episode, for everyone to see the man who creates the puzzles.
So that's a nice teaser, as today's guest is David Kwong, noted New York Times crossword writer, as well as magician. It's a little different than what we usually talk about today, but I think it was a fascinating conversation. I think you're in for a real treat.
Yeah, he's got a lot of interesting stories of how he got to the point of building or kind of molding magic and puzzles together and what it can mean for his audiences. It's fascinating stuff.
He is the host of the sold-out show, The Enigmatist, which is run from L.A. to Toronto, New York, D.C., sold-out runs. He blends puzzle making with magic. And again, he defines magic as just a puzzle to be solved.
And it's really interesting because he's not afraid to kind of give you a little bit behind the scenes of how he does what he does. And to me, part of the fun of being around magic is trying to figure out how the magician did it. And to have him kind of describe how he does some of his puzzles, and he's really open about it, is fascinating.
And another big part of what he's done that you're probably familiar with as our listeners is consulting on Hollywood movies such as Now You See Me, several TV shows that involve magics or trickery in the show. So I think it's a fascinating conversation. We hope you enjoy it. All right. Welcome, David. Thank you for joining us on the In the Harbor podcast. Happy to have you.
Hello from the harbor.
And I think this might be the first time we have two guys from Rochester on the podcast. City. So why don't we kick it off there?
David, you said you grew up in Brighton, and I'm curious to know a little bit about your family background, your parents, and kind of what led down this path. I believe they're at University of Rochester professors, correct?
Yes. Both recently retired. My mother just had her last day yesterday.
Oh, congrats.
Crazy. Yeah. And my father, she's a history professor. My father was at the medical school, a biochemist. And she actually grew up in Rochester. She went to Brighton High School also, though they left and they met. My father's from Hong Kong. He came over to Canada in 1965, and then they met in graduate school at Yale, and then lived in Toronto for a bit, and eventually ended. They've always been in that part of the country, right? Lake Ontario. Came around the lake and went back to where my mother was from. So they both were professors at the University of Rochester.
That's quite the story. And obviously that probably began your love with words and figuring out puzzles and being in such a family with great education to lead into what you're doing now, which we'll get into over the time. But the real question I have for Rochester is, were you a garbage plate guy, or were you too young when you left there? Were you just, not eating?
I've had it. I was a little too young. I think maybe the one and only time I had it was perhaps like senior week bash or graduation. Right. And they brought it in ceremoniously for everybody. And I had it. I do recall it being quite delicious, but I've never gone there as an adult to seek out a garbage plate.
All right. Well, I'll give you some recommendations offline when we're done here.
You know where the best garbage plate is?
Oh my gosh.
So
awesome.
It's more than just Nick Tahoe's?
Oh, they're everywhere now. It's like a whole thing.
Oh, but did it start at Nick Tahoe's?
It sure did. Yep.
Yeah.
It sure did.
My Rochester, it's like I'm pre-dinosaur barbecue, it's
right. Yep.
You can kind of divide things that way. It's a great place to grow up. What a wonderful city to live in.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So I think it'd be helpful if we get into what led you early on to magic. And puzzles broadly.
It's a Rochester story. It's I think Webster, a town, is where Bauman Farms is.
Mm-hmm.
That's the key. So we went there to pick pumpkins, Halloween time, and I saw a magician performing there. And he was in front of a barn. He had a little bunny rabbit. I went over there with my dad, and it is this indelible life transforming moment in which the magician did this trick to me, which blew my mind. And then he did it again for my father. And it's a classic trick. It's still a really, really strong one, a great illusion, where the magician takes a little red ball, puts it in your hand, makes a second one disappear, and when you open your hand, you have two. And my mind was blown. But when he did it to my father opened his hand, he had two little red balls, and I turned to him and I was like, Dad, scientist, smartest man in the world. How did this work? And he said he had no idea. And I'll never forget that. I kind of knew that I wanted to go into magic at that point. And it's why I wrote that book, which we were talking about before, How to Fool Your Parents, because it's all about being that smart kid that has the inside track to pull one over on his very smart parents. So,
which I might add is not just for kids. I did use the tricks to score a free cup of coffee from our producer Charlie here. So,
yeah, there's good stuff in there. I tried to put really good tricks in there.
We did the index card rubber band trick.
Yes, I call it ice cream for dinner. It's a trick called out to lunch is the old magic term for it, and it's really great, right? It like messes with your assumptions about what's real and what's not in this like stack of index cards. It's really clever, isn't it?
Yeah, I thought it was very clever and easy. So
wait, so is your reward I will get a free cup of coffee from you?
Yes.
Somehow I got one too, which I appreciated. So thank you for that. It's a big benefit when you're putting a book together, like how to trick your parents.
Yeah.
What's the steps involved to put all these tricks in for you and to make it where it's remedial enough where someone like us can do it?
It's a delicate process. So first of all, there are only certain things that you can give away, right? Like the tricks can't be trade secrets. They can't be too good. Those are all available for burgeoning magicians who want to learn that stuff and want to seek it out. But you have to put in a little effort to find those books. It used to be even harder. Now it's all kind of either literally on the internet, on YouTube, or everything's indexed and it's not hard to find stuff. But it used to be that you had to go to a magic shop and prove that you had practiced enough that somebody would behind the counter would be more conversant with you and would disclose, all right, you've learned this, why don't you do this next, or you should check out this book. This one's too good, I can't give that to you yet. So for me, I was trying to find tricks that were based on really good principles, ways that the brain is fooled, like nerdy smart stuff. I wanted them all to be clever, nerdy tricks. And then I had to take a lot of the tricks that have been in the magic trick books for kids from over the years and like modify them and make them a little bit better and push the envelope a little bit. And I'm very proud with how it turned out. The book I had in mind when I was making it, did you ever have the Klutz Book of Magic or the Klutz series when you were kids? That was the standard for me. Yeah, there was the Klutz Book of Juggling. I think there was a cooking book. That's what I had in mind when I was making this one.
Yeah, it's a great little capture of concepts and ideas. So, getting a little more in your background. So you ended up going to Harvard. How many magicians have gone to Harvard? I mean, is there like a number? Is there a cult of you guys together? Are you the only one? Where are we at with this?
I think I'm the only one professionally that I'm aware of. There was a little magic club that I started. Maybe it existed in previous decades, but I like refounded it with Adam Grant, who is a Wharton Business School professor and author and business thought leader. And he's got some tricks up his sleeve, but he's busy like teaching people how to improve their companies and he's doing the real work, But so there were probably like half a dozen of us. I remember like I think 6 of us piled in a van and drove to Connecticut. It took hours and hours and hours for some kid's bar mitzvah, and I think collectively we got paid $200. It was fun.
Well,
I think it's still going. I think the Magic Club is still going.
that's great. Do you visit campus? Or I remember I was just reading an article before this. I think it was from the Harvard Crimson about your major, and I think you've been the only one with that very specific major.
Well, my major was, or concentration as they call it there, of course, was history. They don't let you put history of magic on your diploma, but that was indeed my focus. So I've clearly loved this material since I was a kid and as a young adult, and I focused everything I could, all the writing and my senior thesis on the history of these great magicians.
How,
Very
how,
colorful, very colorful characters.
how did that conversation go with your academic parents? You know, they're probably so proud you're going to Harvard, and then you're like, history of magic.
That was fine because my mother's a history professor, so she was pleased that I was like following in her footsteps and doing archival research, and it was a really really fun field to study because I would go into the theater collection and the New York Public Library's theater collection, and like you're holding playbills and you're looking at old lithographs and photographs and you're making conclusions from archival research. So there's nothing like that. And she was very pleased. It was the post-college telling them that I want to be a magician, which I've done sort of a few times. I would take some steps into it and then go back. And they've always been supportive, but I would say they were lightly concerned.
So you make that leap, you make that jump into this is going to be my career, and perhaps the first person to do that from such an established university. And what was that leap? The first kind of show you did, or what was the anticipation and maybe some of the things you were thinking about you wanted to experience with the audience?
Well, there's a step in between, and it's that I've always loved entertainment and media. And my mother always jokes, did I not give you enough attention as a kid? So I went into like film and TV first. So I went to New York. I worked for HBO in marketing, sort of like first job out of college. Then I went to LA eventually. I was at production companies, and eventually I was at DreamWorks Animation doing studio stuff, trying to climb up there in their development department, which is like producing, finding material, working with writers. And that was an incredible experience. I think that was my real boot camp in storytelling. And then, as I was working in Hollywood and I had like a line to all the agents, I was like on the wire. I was able to find out about all the movies and TV projects that had to do with magic. So when I heard about this really nascent fledgling of a script called Now You See Me, which was a bank heist movie with magicians, I got involved. I reached out to the director and the writers and the studio, which was Lionsgate, and I worked really hard with those writers to shape that story. And then when the movie got the green light, that was like this big leap of faith. I quit my desk job at DreamWorks, went on set, was teaching the actors sleight of hand. I was helping develop the illusions and the shape of the story. That was like I was probably in New Orleans for 6 months, and the movie was a big hit, which was exciting. They're making a third one right now, and that was like the push out of the nest, right? Like I didn't go back to a desk job at that point, and I figured, you know what? I've always wanted to try being a magician professionally, gigging around, uh, and I figured if I can make X amount this year, which will be the same small amount I was making as on low on the totem pole at DreamWorks Animation, like I should keep going with it, and I did, and then it got better and better and better, and my approach to magic and everything like transformed, and I like eventually like sculpted this brand that I have now, which is very authentic to who I am, which is like the brainy, nerdy, cerebral magic guy who loves puzzles and crosswords and math and numbers, and here we are.
Yeah, and I think, Sean and I were watching some YouTube videos of yours, and one I think was at Google with the Scrabble tiles.
Yeah.
That's
still on the show. Still on the show.
I don't really understand how you got there. I part of the fun of Magic as someone who consumes it and has no clue what's going on your side of the fence is trying to figure out how you got to where you got, right? And to me, that's the fascinating part about what you've done with all the stuff that we've been able to consume that you do is I have no clue how you got to where you did. And to me, that's the fun of Magic is trying to figure out the puzzle. And with the Scrabble, if for all of our viewers, you got to check this out. It'll blow your mind. And there's a bunch that'll blow your mind that we'll get to. But how did you come up? You don't have to tell us the secrets, obviously, but were you just playing Scrabble and figured out how to do this? Or what was the genesis of that?
Okay, well, I loved Scrabble as a kid. My mother, the history professor, she's the humanities side. My dad's the science and math side. I always say it's math and verbal, So I continue to have this love of puzzles and word play and word games with my mother. What I'll say is Magic has been around for, the stage magic as we know it, basically since the turn of the last century. So for 125 years, or maybe a little bit before that, we've been doing the same tricks and we've been putting new spins on this old stuff. And there are different lists and different thinkers in the magic world have really distilled it down. And some people say there are 7 basic tricks, right? Or there's 10 different principles of illusion that we're cobbling together. And that's what I've done. So I basically there was an evolution. It didn't happen overnight. So when I struck out to be a professional magician, I always brought with me a erudite approach and a refined, if you will, approach. I kind of learned, by going to school on the East Coast that you should wear a nice suit and tie and kind of show up that way. And that was a good way to penetrate the corporate market. So I had this kind of formal air to how I performed, but it wasn't refined beyond that, right? It was I hadn't shaped my approach and I was doing the tricks in the same way, basically, as everybody else was. And it wasn't until I was 30 when the light bulb turned on and I realized that I could take this other world that I was an expert in, which is puzzles and games, and cross-pollinate it into Magic and create this brand new approach to Magic. So I don't want to cheapen what I do, but the crossword puzzle trick, which we could talk about, is basically, I have this big board up and I'm making a crossword in real time as quickly as possible. People are throwing words up to me. I'm putting in the black squares. I'm teaching people about how a crossword comes together, which people love and find fascinating. But in the end, I reveal that the playing card from an hour earlier, I've hidden it in the puzzle on the diagonals, backwards, you can't see it until I circle it in a different color. And I really want to distill that down because it's actually just pick a card, any card. An hour earlier, you picked a card, 5 of spades, and then I reveal it in this very fun, surprising way. And that is Magic. That's the profession is can you come up with a new, fresh way to present this old stuff?
I think that's so cool. I got to tell you, I watched that on YouTube and it is wicked that you're able to pull that off. To me, I know there's a ton of preparation that went into it, but I suggested to Jason, we could probably try to do this for 6 months and we would not get close. The level of skill that it takes you, and obviously you're a wizard when it comes to building crossword puzzles and you've worked on it your entire career. But that to me, of all the stuff you did, and you can go on YouTube and watch this, when you circle the card, it's fascinating. It's almost like you always have like 2 tricks in your tricks, and the second one pops up. You're like, what?
Yeah.
How does that even happen?
Yeah. Thank you. I still do it today. It's the anchor of my show. I end every show with it. And yeah, it's the hallmark of what I do, which is multi-layered tricks that call back to the thing before. And you don't realize that. I mean, the Scrabble trick, which you described, is basically that I take Scrabble words, and when you assign the values to those letters, right? The S in Sean is 1, it's a common letter, but the T and is 1 and the C is 3 and the H is at 4, right? When you assign those letters, those numbers to those letters, you can add them up and make a new number, and that could match a serial number or the time and date. Or I like to hide a second message within things that we are familiar with. And I think that is the like hallmark of what I do, and it's what puzzlers do. And that's the real like cross-pollination of taking all these tropes from the puzzle world. Because by the way, puzzle people come to my show and they know exactly what is about to happen, except they don't know how the magic stuff works, but they know how the puzzle stuff works. And the magicians don't know how the puzzle stuff works. And there's only like a few friends of mine that were nerdy enough to like both of those things that they can like figure it all out.
I think that's so cool, and you're kind of blending the magic and the puzzle world. And you know, another thing that you're known for is your New York Times crosswords.
Yeah, if I could do that as a full-time job, I would. And some people do, but I love it. I've loved it for 20 years. I solved them when I was a kid, so even longer, but constructing about 20 years. And I now like do 1 or 2 a year in the Times, and they're usually like very special, tricky, devious puzzles. I'm working on one right now. It's been taking me a few months.
What is that, another Sunday?
I'm working on a Sunday for hopefully the end of this year, like a holiday themed one.
So, and I guess for our listeners that aren't familiar with crosswords, Sundays typically tend to be a little more difficult. Monday is going to be your easiest, especially in the New York Times, and the difficulty kind of ranges up. Usually a rebus puzzle in the Thursdays, which I really enjoyed your Thursday puzzle. It was April of 2024.
That one was, that was with the stars, right? A Star is Born.
Yes. So the revealer is a star is B or N. So it was phenomenal puzzle.
If you parse born as B or N, you get a star as B or N. And you know what I've done there is I am messing with the conventions of the puzzle. So for those of you that solve crosswords, you are familiar with the idea that a clue with a star in front of it is telling you that this is one of the like 5 or 6 thematic clues that's important to the puzzle. So I decided to take those stars and actually use them in a tricky way. So you solve the revealer in the grid, which is a star is born, or a star is B or N. And if there was a star in front of the word ascent, it became nascent if you take that star as an N. I tried to have a pronunciation change, right?
That's so cool.
So assist in a foursome, the star in that case was a B in front of assist. So it became bassist in a foursome. And the answer was Paul McCartney. Yeah. What was the really mean one I did? Was it Ovid of mythology?
Yes,
Ovid of Greek
that
mythology?
that was mean, but
it wasn't Ovid, the author of Metamorphosis, but that star became a B, so it was Bovid of Metamorphosis, and the answer was like the Cretan bull.
It was, and that was a challenge. Just I had to get the downs to get the. I had bull at the end and then the, so I knew we were going the Bovid Bovid route, but
Nice.
that was fun.
When you have a blank sheet in front of you and you're about to enter into creating a crossword puzzle to trick, or not necessarily trick, but to incite, madness amongst the people who are doing it. Where are you pulling this from? You just do a huge whiteboard, write out a million different things that might be interesting, or how do you think about it when you attack it?
A lot of Google spreadsheets. I can share one with you. We can do it now over Zoom, or I can send it to you and you can share it with your listeners and viewers. But there was this puzzle that I had in December of last year, which was a Sunday puzzle called the Art Heist. And the idea there was to hide painters' names, or paintings' names rather. I'll clarify. It's one and the same, right? A painter's name would be like Dolly, but you could say, I have a dolly on the wall, right? So to hide them in phrases. So like Dolly is in the phrase, Mary had a little lamb. The D from had is the beginning of Dolly. Mary had a little lamb. So I went through and found 100 phrases or so that had different painters or paintings hidden in them. So from 1 to 10 has Monet hidden in the middle of it. The craziest one I found was if the clue was something like theatrical haze and fog, or haze and fog used in theatrical productions, and the answer is smoke effects. Yeah, smoke effects has O'Keeffe hidden in George O'Keeffe's name, which is crazy that I found that.
Right. I think the more approachable one would be the cheer in the Bronx.
Yeah, cheer in the Bronx, go Yankees is Goya.
Goya, right.
I wanted to have one at the beginning of a phrase. Goya is at the beginning of go Yankees. And then Titian is at the end of registered dietitian. So you have to make sure that you put these hidden things in a variety. You want both the beginning, the end, and then most of them in the middle.
Now, I think you got some accolades for that December 15th crossword from the nerdier types, but it was the Art Heist one. But then it was some of the regular solvers were a bit upset. And I think there was.
Well, I don't know if you want to call them regular solvers, but the Reddit boards were lit up, and it was like Will Shortz told me when I saw him in March that it was his favorite puzzle of the year, and then the Reddit voted it as the worst puzzle of the year.
Oh, that's
so
perfect.
It's kind of like winning the Oscar and the Razzie in the same year. I'm going to go more with Will Shortz's opinion here.
Yeah, but
I think I slowed everybody's time down by 20 minutes, and some people, I broke a lot of streaks, and it was hard, but that's the fun of it, is push the envelope, make it interesting and different. And I think we're also in this weird combative era where if someone's dissatisfied with something, they're even going to reach out to a crossword puzzler and send them a nasty email. I write crossword puzzles, people. Who cares? But anyway, it was how dare you? I do puzzles to relax. How dare you challenge me? But I don't care.
I think there was a particular detail in that puzzle that made it more complicated, just the art heist aspect of it. But then the hidden letters to spell out the kind of the I was
multi-layers.
Yep.
Yeah, multi-layer, exactly. The final revealer at the end was I was framed from those letters. I think that puzzle was probably best done on paper in the magazine. And I think 85% of the solvers are now doing it digitally. So it was hard to look at the whole puzzle at once if you were on your phone. I think that's why a lot of people were dissatisfied with it. But it was pretty cool.
Since we're in the world of working with financial advisors, that's what we do on a daily basis. And what I'm trying to think of as you're speaking about the puzzlers do you know what the market is for people who do the New York Times puzzle? Is there a number that they come up with how many people do it on a daily basis?
Oh, how many people solve it?
Yeah. Because
The answer is,
if you're saying 90% are doing it digitally, I would assume that they got to have the data.
oh, they definitely have the data. And though I don't know the exact numbers, I will tell you that something like 80%, I'm making that up, the large majority of subscribers to the New York Times are doing it through the games. And it's transformed the entire business model. And
Really?
I've heard people joke that the New York Times is a games company now that also has news. And it's because of Wordle, it's because of connections and the spelling bee and all these games that is where the subscribers are coming from. And people are looking for a fun routine when they're on the subway or when they wake up every morning, they do the Wordle really quickly. I think their recipes, the New York Times food is really popular too. And I think that's how they're drawing people in. And I'm sure that data's out there, and I'm sure it's over 75% of the subscribers are through the games.
Wow.
And
That's fascinating.
you've seen other publications and websites follow suit. The Atlantic just launched a bunch of games, but even like LinkedIn has its daily game now, and um, you know, I think like TED Talks has like launched a daily game, and it's like everyone's doing that.
Well, and I think the other interesting thing too is with crosswords specifically, the mini has probably introduced more people to solving crosswords than ever before.
Yep.
And then there's the social aspect of it too in the apps where you're texting all your friends. You know, this was my
Yep.
score. Can you beat me?
Yeah, well,
which I think is interesting.
My 12-year-old daughter has a Wordle, streak going for I don't know how long, but it's definitely gotten younger. I feel like with technology and whatnot.
Absolutely, and broader, and there's something for everyone. I mean, much to my dismay, I think they've now started doing an a parallel easier Friday puzzle. I think they clue it easier, so you can either do the like second hardest day of the week as it was intended, or you can do like an easier one. And the mini, and it's like a gateway into doing all these things. So overall, it's great. Numbers of people doing puzzles is climbing, but you know, they know what they're doing.
I think we need
It's
to
a
create
huge,
one for our financial advisors. That's what we should do. We should create a puzzle for our financial advisors, send it out to them, have like some of the clues would be like, options or
Yeah,
call
very
rights.
topical.
Yeah.
That could be.
yeah. Oh yeah, Bloomberg has a game that is trivia, and it's kind of like Learned League, which is that's kind of the pinnacle of online trivia. And I believe it's all been like skinned as like place your bets and hedge your bets, and
Mm-hmm.
it's all it's kind of in that language. So it appeals to that kind of analytical mind.
Oh, we'll have to check that out.
Yeah.
I'm gonna look that up.
Yeah.
One thing that I think is interesting is as a magician, you kind of acknowledge that everything is a puzzle to be figured out. So, taking the magic out of it, and then we can get into the Hollywood aspect too, because you had your quote, magicians or you reused a quote, magicians are actors acting as a magician.
Yeah, there's a lot to unpack there. So that quote is from the great Jean-Eugène Robert Houdin. Robert Houdin was the father of modern magic. He was a Frenchman in the 19th century, and he was so respected that Houdini took his name. That Houdini added an I to Houdin, Houdin, to get Houdini. I want to be like Houdin. And he was the first magician to take magic off of the streets and away from the court jesters and like turn it into a proper evening show. So he had his theater in Paris, and people would come see him perform. And his famous quote is I screwed it up. The magician is an actor playing the part of a magician. So where do we go from there? Well, my approach calling all magic tricks puzzles is basically my way of acknowledging that it's not real, that it's all tricks, it's all misdirection, it's all science that fools your brain. And I'm a little more irreverent than most. There's a small group of us that really like to pull back the curtain on magic. Famously, Penn and Teller have been doing it for 50 years. They're celebrating their 50th anniversary this year. They're like at the top of the pantheon. We love them, you know. Um, and so my approach is to say it's all puzzle. Go ahead, figure it out. Like, I don't mind. I present this to you as something that could be solved. Hopefully, you won't solve it right now. You'll go home and think about it and discuss it. But I don't, as opposed to um, some mind readers and mentalists, and then at the extreme, you have psychics and tarot card readers, and all of those spiritualists, televangelists, mediums. Like they're all magicians. They're all using the same tricks, which is why famously over the centuries, or since 100 for the last 150 years, like magicians have been the great like seance busters. Houdini himself would like put on a disguise and go into a seance and like break it up, because they're using our tricks. They're looking you up on the internet ahead of time.
Yeah.
That's like a hot reading, or cold reading is to do it right here based on things that you say, and taking advantage of confirmation bias. And it's all BS. Uh, but here's the thing. People want to believe. They want to believe in something so badly. And even after psychics are exposed, people just come back the next day. It's pretty interesting.
Miss Cleo wasn't real?
None of it's real.
Oh, man.
It's very lucrative. If I wanted to use my powers for evil, I could go into psychic readings.
I think you make a great point, though, with the research and the hard work you do and the time you put into creating these. Looking into your shows that you're doing now, what part of your life is committed to the preparation of these when you put together? I assume the show's about a little over an hour.
Well, my full stage show is 90 minutes. It's called The Enigmatist.
Which is getting rave reviews, by the way, everywhere.
Thanks.
People love
Thank
it.
you. Thank you. I just wrapped a run in Toronto. I did New York, LA, Chicago, and the Kennedy Center. And it's like a immersive evening of magic and puzzles and code breaking. I try to make puzzles and games accessible to everybody. It's not meant to be like too hard. Everyone feels smart coming out of that show, which is great.
We might need to test that smart thing out.
Yes.
I think, yeah. So you're asking like what goes into that?
How much time does it take you to come this up?
Well, it's that joke. Sorry, that show is based on like 15 years of material, which is really in stark contrast to the second show I'm writing, right now, which is why the sophomore album is so difficult,
Yeah, right.
So The Enigmatist is based on all my puzzle magic tricks that I've been doing in people's living rooms and on corporate ballroom stages and hotels for corporate retreats, and it's everything I love, and I weave a story around it, and it's like, it's been a real success. The next one is I'm working on it right now, and it's gonna be fun, but it's challenging.
I think pushing the envelope into that next stage has got to be what challenges you and keeps you going, but also what is difficult, because the audience wants to see new material. They want to see new things always. And with the advent of things like YouTube, you can go see the trick and you might know it beforehand. Still blown away by it, but that's got to be the hardest part about what you're doing on a daily basis.
Well, storytelling is key. And the thing is, most magicians are not great storytellers. And that's because there's this economy of the like hobbyist version of the magic, right? There's a lot of magician hobbies out there, and they buy the tricks and they learn the routine the way it is prescribed, either in the text that they get with the trick or they watch it on YouTube, and it's sort of repeating and mimicking the approach of the person who came up with the trick. And to really create a theatrical experience that is engaging and moving, you need storytelling, you need narrative. And there's only a handful of people out there that do that well. The Enigmatist did a pretty good job of that. I tell a compelling story in it. But what I'm trying to do with the next show is push that even further. And uh, the Enigmatist was based on the puzzle tricks that I had already, and then I wove a story around that to give it this like cohesive feeling and and make the show a full evening. But in contrast, this next show I'm doing, I'm like writing the story first, make that as good as possible, and then figure out the tricks that work with that story.
Very cool.
Oh, I think it's incredible. And I want to see those shows. Do you have runs lined up?
There's so I'm going to be doing a week in London in November. It's Thanksgiving week, much to the dismay of my mother. I'll be going over, I think the first one's November 24th. So that's a week there in London at Wilton's Music Hall. And then I'm probably going to be in St. Louis in March of 26. And we're working on Dallas, and Toronto is such a success that I'm working on coming back to Toronto next year too.
Oh, that's great. And your parents made it to the Toronto show, correct?
They've come to all of them, I think. It was the Kennedy Center 2 summers ago was a very proud moment to have these two esteemed professors seeing their son sell out the Kennedy Center was kind of a cool thing.
Oh, I can imagine. Absolutely. I want to talk a little bit about Misdirectors Guild, if we can kind of get into that and how you got started with Now You See Me. But there's been countless other movies and television shows that you've consulted on now.
Well, filmmakers and producers, they always need something cool in their action movies. Now You See Me was a movie just about magicians, but I've worked on other things where a filmmaker will call me up and say, I need some cool ideas for how the hero can escape out of this situation. You got any tricks up your sleeve? Sorry to use that pun. And usually like I end up telling them some cool situation or some cool maneuver that they hadn't thought of before. So that's how I get to weigh in to cool things like Mission Impossible or Ghostbusters or things like that. And then on the puzzle side, like there are projects that have to do with secret codes and treasure maps and I've worked on a lot of that stuff too. So Blind Spot, which is this great show on NBC, 100 episodes. They're all on Netflix, just dropped. And it's like everyone's watching that now, which is cool. And that was a show about a character played by Jamie Alexander who wakes up in Times Square. Her memory's been wiped, and she's like covered head to toe in tattoos, which are like treasure maps and secret codes, leading her each week on an adventure to figure out like what the heck happened to her. So my friend Dave and I, Dave Shukan, we like came up with all that stuff.
That's really wild. Whenever National Treasure comes on in my house, I have to watch it. Like I can't get away from it. And it's kind of the similar methodology of clue to clue to clue to figure out what's going to happen. And then it's always a bit of a twist at the end.
Well, in Blind Spot, what was fascinating to me, I watched the show, and it was how every episode you were going back to a different clue that was tattooed on her body. And just the amount of forethought that had to go into planning out that entire series, I think is incredible.
Yeah, Martin Garrow, the creator, is a brilliant guy. And he came up with an arc to where he wanted the show to go. And he had this original layout of all the tattoos. But then some of them weren't figured out either. Like he would have, um, I don't even remember what it was. I had this huge binder full of the tattoos, and there might be like Fibonacci sequences here, or like a big black crow, or he hadn't quite figured out what that was yet. So sometimes we had to come up with a code that would fit the existing image.
That's really unbelievable. I can't wait to watch it. I'm gonna put that on the list. Writing that one down.
Yeah.
It's becoming a big list for you, Sean.
I know. All my free time, I'm going to be watching these shows. I promise you.
So there is a big aspect of psychology that goes into your work too, and I think for all magicians with sleight of hand, everything, and look over here. How does that kind of factor into your work? Because I would say it's very scientific.
Well, our brains are imperfect, right? We make all sorts of assumptions and jump to conclusions in order to like function every day. Otherwise, we would have cognitive overload. We couldn't process all of the information that's hitting us at any given moment. So magicians are very aware of those assumptions, those leaps that we make. I call it mind the gap. And magicians are aware of what that gap is, and we like to mess around with that and take advantage of those gaps in your cognition. So I was just asked, I hope this comes to fruition. You're hearing this for the first time. I was just asked to give a new TED talk with the TED Sports, the inaugural TED Sports conference. And I was thinking like, what am I gonna do there? How am I gonna liken misdirection and what I do to sports? And I think there's like a tremendous overlap. If you think about trick plays and fakes and deeks, and it's like, these players they're like short-circuiting your brain, right?
Sure.
You as a you lock into pattern recognition, right? You see someone move in a certain way and you're used to that. And then these trick plays will like replicate that pattern, but then like, twist it or literally sneak it, in a different way.
Yeah.
So it's going to be fun to explore all of those different things that I can find on how the best trick plays, the best deeks are like mimicking like what we're used to seeing.
Yeah, you watch old videos of Barry Sanders running around. He'd manipulate the defender to think he's going one way, then go the other way. Same thing in my sport, hockey. You see a player like Connor McDavid, how he's able to manipulate a defender to think one thing, and it's immediately goes the other way. It's quite amazing.
Yeah, I would love to just like get into. I have to do my research, but it's like, what exactly do we pick up on? It's like your brain when you see, two eyes and shoulders, and it's like that, you're like, okay, that's a body and it's going this way, right? Like what exactly is at a granular level, are we detecting and then like registering as that's what's happening, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if you can mimic that and then manipulate it, then you're in control of the situation.
That could be really interesting when you do the TED Talk with the sports. I think the Detroit Lions could use a consultant.
Well, they go for it enough on fourth down.
That's right, but the
well,
old
they're
trick
good.
play.
They're good. They're good now, though, right?
They are good, but we can always be better.
And the Tigers are the best team in baseball.
Yes, I don't know. Let's hope they can keep it up. But I think the run the Tigers went on from kind of mid-season break last year is
the best in baseball.
Best in baseball.
Yep, absolutely.
Kind of came out of nowhere. It's fun to watch for sure, especially with Scooble.
Yeah, it helps having Scooble.
I don't know if they need my help. I think they're doing great. The Red Sox need my help.
Is that your team?
That's my team from all those Cape Cod summers. And I think the management deceives their own club they screw everything up and trade everybody away.
So there's still deception going on.
Somewhere.
Yeah. God.
One thing that I think would be worth discussing is your views on artificial intelligence and what that means for puzzle solving and magic.
I don't know. It is. Oh gosh, no one knows what's going to happen. I think that people are always going to want wonder and to be amazed. That's the good news. And I think for me, I am at least particularly armed for this coming era, this era we're in now, frankly, uh, because I do like an analog show, and I think people will and do enjoy coming to the theater, turning off their phone for 90 minutes and seeing me do sleight of hand things with my brain. They enjoy the wonder and amazement of something like vanishing right in front of their eyes and appearing somewhere else. And so I think I'm fine for the rest of my career, but I'm not sure. Um, I'm not sure what AI is going to do to our overall sense of wonder and what will amaze us still, because now we can just press a button or give a prompt and magic happens. Things are created. I'd like to think that this technology is creating opportunities for more wonder, that it's going to open up more discoveries, but we'll see. Um, puzzle solving, puzzle creation will get easier with AI. I think some crossword people are taking advantage of it. It's not, Chat GPT and the like have not been programmed yet to make a crossword puzzle to the standards of the New York Times, but it can be, it will, it'll get there. I think right now our capacity for wordplay and those nuances is something that AI can't handle yet, but it'll probably get there.
Yeah, I think that's interesting. I would still like the human element. I mean, there's so many things that AI can't solve for, but you may know better than us right now. I know when you were at Davos, you asked for a guest participant.
Yeah, it's a good story. I created this show called Mentalist versus the Machine, where I do magic tricks involving technology and AI, and it's a lot of what I do for companies. Um, and they had me at Davos. BCG had me come over, and I was doing a Chat GPT trick and asked for a volunteer, and Sam Altman raised his hand, and I was like, literally, I said, no, Sam, truly, anybody but you come up on stage. Like, I did not want him to look at my like janky Chat GPT that I had messed with. It's like,
Right.
if you look, but then kind of the gears were turning in my head, and I was like, I guess this is a pretty good PR stunt. I should have him do it. And the client, BCG, was going crazy. They're like, yeah, go up on stage. So like ultimately, that's what you want to do. And they were like rolling in the aisles. It was so funny.
I can only imagine when he volunteers. I mean, I guess you have to be careful at Davos when you're asking for volunteers. You never know who it's going to be.
Oh yeah, that's for sure. And he like was standing there looking at the screen, and he was like, but I think I fooled him. I know I fooled him. In that moment, I think if he got into like the back end programming of the Chat GPT I was using, it wouldn't hold up. But in the moment on stage with the pressure of the lights, like he didn't know what was happening.
Yeah, I bet that was incredible. Yeah. So, and you fooled the machine, man, fooled the machine. So,
yeah.
Well, I know we've taken a lot of your time. So what we've been doing in a lot of these episodes is rapid fire questions at the end. So I think we'll take it there if that works for you.
Sure.
Some guests have been more verbose than others, so I tell them one or two words. Sometimes we get 3 paragraphs.
All right, we'll see what happens.
All right. So hardest puzzle you've ever created?
I made a New York Times Sunday puzzle in 2011. That was a Mad Magazine fold-in homage. So the inside back cover of Mad Magazine was the fold-in, where the right side folds over to the left, and the crossword puzzle folds like that. That took me years to make.
Oh, that's pretty cool. Favorite trick you've ever performed live?
I once, this is a much longer story, but I once slipped a two of spades in somebody's pocket at a cocktail, like walk around sleight of hand thing. And before I could do anything, this banker walks up to me and goes, "All right, magic trick boy, you think you're so good? Make the two of spades appear." And
Come
you
on.
wait your whole life for that to happen.
That is incredible. You know, I get nervous after watching Arrested Development. I get nervous saying trick when Job goes, "It's an illusion, Michael."
It's all tricks is fine.
Go-to brain game on a plane.
My daily puzzle, again, we talked about the explosion in popularity of these things, is called Quintumble. Quin tumble, Tumble. Quintumble. I play it every morning. Sometimes I do it in 30 seconds. Sometimes it takes a couple of minutes. When I was first starting, it took 5 minutes. It is my favorite, and it's hard. The rules are simple, but it's tough. Quintumble. Check it out.
All
Yeah.
right. Favorite clue, if we go back to Crosswords, what's the favorite clue you've ever written?
Honestly, it's hard for me to remember the clues because they're kind of incidental to putting the grid together. Um, I can do a cop out and tell you Will Shortz's favorite clue, which is it turns into a new story, which solves to spiral staircase. I love stuff like that. I'm trying to think. Let me take a beat to think about it, and I'll come up with one that I've done.
No problem. We have a magic trick you'll never get tired of performing.
The crossword puzzle trick anchors my whole show. I'll probably do it the rest of my life.
Which is
that's got,
probably the most
yeah,
unique aspect, too, because you're blending two different worlds, the puzzling world, the
yeah.
magic world.
It's fascinating.
Yeah.
People have to go see that in your show. It's
There's
awesome.
Thank you, thank you. There's a trick in the middle of my show, which I call the history mystery, which is probably my favorite thing to do in the show. Um, so I basically like hack somebody's phone in the show, kind of thing.
All right.
Love it.
That sounds great.
Yeah.
Most surprising audience reaction you've ever received?
The best thing about The Enigmatist is it's become a family show, and I did not intend it to be that way, and the material hasn't changed. But when I performed at the Kennedy Center, they marketed it as a family show, and suddenly, like, grandparents were bringing their grandkids. And the driving thing of the show is that there's a box on stage with a combination on it, and I challenge the audience to see if they can figure out the combination. The best thing that happens is when like a 10-year-old kid stands up and figures it out before any of the adults. That's the best part of the show.
And you hope you're inspiring, or other magicians at that age like you were.
Yeah, I tell a story about Will Shortz signing my puzzle book when I was a kid. I went to hear him give a talk, and he saw my puzzle book, and it like changed my whole life. And someone said the nicest thing after my Chicago show out in the lobby. And they said, "David, you're doing for these kids what Will Shortz did to you." And I just thought that was so nice.
That's fascinating. Good. Well, we got to get you down here in Detroit to come do a show. We'll have to work on that for you.
Yes, it's on the list. I would love to do it in Detroit. Absolutely.
Let's make
My
that
wife
happen.
would be thrilled. Yeah, I've married into Michigan. I'm all in.
Me too. Two Rochester guys now, in Michigan. So
you have more in common too. I think you actually overlapped in Michigan.
Oh yeah, that's right.
With David's wife.
Oh, with Ashley? Yeah.
I was 99 there. And never really left here afterwards. These communities are pretty similar, Rochester and suburban Detroit. They're pretty similar areas.
Yeah.
So well, great, man. Thanks so much for joining us. It's awesome to hear your stories, and we look forward to your next endeavor in the movies or show or all these cool things that you're doing. It's fascinating. Everyone loves magic.
Thank you.
And I agree with you. It's great to bring the family out to the show. And any city David's in, make sure you go watch.
And do you have are you working on another book? Maybe one geared
I'm
towards
working on a
adults?
sequel. I'm working on a sequel to How to Fool Your Parents. No, this will be another kid's book. But there's a book that predates that, which was for the adults, which is called Spellbound, The 7 Principles of Illusion, and it kind of breaks down magic and tells you where I see that in the world, in business and in politics and dating life. And that was first. And then I was sitting with my editor having lunch, and she said, "It's too bad you can't do Spellbound for kids." And I said, "You're right. It's too dry. It's too boring. They won't like it. Unless you did like How to Fool Your Parents." And she goes, "We're doing that. Let's go."
That's so cool.
It really, I came up with that title over lunch, and 2 years later, here we are.
Well, and I guess I don't need the adult magic book because this is my level right now for
100%.
tricks. I did take the oath though, Sean. So I am qualified. Took the magician's oath.
Thank God.
I like signing those books for kids. So if you go to my website and you buy it, you can drop me a note and I'll sign it and put it in the mail to you.
Very cool.
Absolutely. Well, thank you very much for your time.
Yeah, great to chat.
We want to thank David for spending the time with us. It was great to hear his story. I think the only professional magician from Harvard. There may be more, so let us know. But check out his crossword puzzle. This was the December 15th one we talked about, if you're into that sort of thing. Fascinating puzzle, fun to complete. And then for any kids interested in learning how to fool their parents, here's his book, How to Fool Your Parents. There will be another one coming soon. You can check out more of David's work on davidkwongmagic.com.
Another kid from Rochester doing well. I'm really proud of him and what he's been able to build, and it's such a fascinating, I guess, the enigmatist aura around him is just really cool. If you have a chance to look at some of the YouTube stuff that's out there on him, you'll be blown away. And if you want to utilize him for a corporate event or any other events that you might be thinking about having, you can reach out to him at davidkwong.com as well.
davidkwongmagic.com.
Oh, yeah. David Kwong Magic. See?
Yes.
I did a trick there.
Forgetfulness. Trick. Yeah.
It's all an illusion.
Yeah, it certainly is. It certainly is. Well, thank you again. This is In the Heart.